Ethan Hartley is a self-made businessman with everything anyone could want in their lives, but love. As he prepares to demolish the historic Graywood mansion to build his newest skyscraper, he finds himself haunted by the estate's eerie stillness and mysterious past. Over several weeks, he finds himself taunted by dirty dreams of a sexy ghost named Julian. These torrid fantasies awaken emotions in Ethan that he thought he had long buried. As the line between real and imagined blurs, he finds himself torn about destroying the old mansion. Reluctantly, Ethan finds himself on a journey that transcends time, desire, and reality as he knows it. Welcome, my fiendish friends, to our Steamy Stories Halloween episode. So, I have a question. Do you believe in ghosts? Well, we certainly do. Are we afraid of them? We are not. We're actually quite excited to meet a sexy specter. Yep, a strapping spirit is welcome in our bedroom anytime. In fact, we quite enjoy anything that goes bump in the night. So sit back this All Hallows Eve, light your jack-o'-lantern, and cozy up to a black cat while I tell you this month's Steamy Stories episode. Ethan Hartley was the definition of success. At 6 feet tall with a lean, muscular build, he was a self-made businessman who exuded confidence. His dark brown hair was always styled perfectly, a calculated mess that made him look both professional and effortlessly attractive. His piercing blue eyes, often described as cold and calculating, were tools of his trade. Eyes that could dissect a situation in seconds, turning uncertainty into opportunity. His sharp features and high cheekbones gave him a sculpted, striking appearance, but it was his demeanor that truly set him apart. An air of confidence, almost arrogance, that made it clear he was used to getting what he wanted. His custom-tailored suits fit him like a glove, highlighting his physique without being ostentatious. Ethan appreciated the finer things in life, like his designer wardrobe, Italian sports car, and lavish corner office, but he never flaunted them. Everything about him was carefully calculated for success and control. Despite all his achievements, Ethan's life lacked one thing: love. His romantic encounters were as cold and transactional as his business deals. Relationships were distractions, vulnerabilities he couldn't afford. He had convinced himself that he was better off alone, his life complete without the mess of emotional entanglements. The Graywood mansion was just another project, a relic of a bygone era standing in the way of progress. To Ethan, it was an eyesore, an antique with no place in the modern world he was building. His goal was simple: demolish it and replace it with something new, something better. But before the building could be torn down, the Historical Society insisted every item be cataloged and preserved if it held significance. Ethan, always a man of his word, planned to fulfill these demands quickly so the mansion's replacement could proceed. The only time he had to do this was at night. His days were packed with meetings and deadlines, While others spent their evenings with family, Ethan found solace in the quiet of the mansion, working through the night to catalog its possessions. As he worked, the mansion's eerie stillness seemed to whisper to him. The creaking floors, the faint sounds carried by the wind, and the constant feeling that he wasn't alone. All of it unsettled him in ways he couldn't explain. But Ethan wasn't prone to superstition. He prided himself on being rational, unmoved by emotion or fantasy. As the wind whistled through the old rafters, the house moaned due to its antiquated foundation and sad, empty existence. Ethan wondered if it was just his imagination playing tricks on him, or if the house was somehow alive. Ethan broke the silence of the evening by forcing a laugh out loud as he proclaimed to himself, "Of all the times of year to be stuck in a creepy old mansion, I had to pick Halloween to do it." Without much ado, he forced any frightening thoughts out of his head. There was work to do. A haunted house wasn't about to slow up his progress on tearing this old manor to build an impressive new skyrise. One night, after hours of work, Ethan fell asleep in a dusty armchair in the parlor. His dreams usually consisted of spreadsheets and construction plans, but this one was different. He found himself in the mansion, but it was no longer decaying and unnerving. It was alive, hospitable, and glowing with warm light. Much to his surprise, cool jazz music filled the air. In his dream, Ethan saw an impressive man standing by the grand staircase. Dressed in a finely tailored suit, the man exuded elegance from another era. When he turned to face Ethan, his deep, brown eyes held a mix of curiosity and amusement, as if he knew something Ethan didn't. The man's handsome face, full lips, and warm olive skin captivated Ethan. There was something in his expression, a softness and warmth that seemed entirely out of place in Ethan's cold, calculating world. As the man smiled, Ethan felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through his chest, a sensation he hadn't experienced before. It was as though this stranger understood him in a way no one else had. Before Ethan could speak, the man faded away, and the dream was lost. Ethan awoke with a start, his heart racing, an image of the man still fresh in his mind. The mansion was silent, but the echoes of the dream haunted him in ways he couldn't shake. The next night, Ethan returned to the mansion, telling himself it was to finish cataloging the relics. But deep down, he knew he was there for a different reason. The dreams continued, growing more vivid each night. The man in his dreams became more real, more tangible. Ethan found himself longing for sleep, waiting for the moment he could see him again and touch him, feel the powerful arms of a handsome stud hold him. Each and every night that week, Ethan rested his head on the pillow of the bed in the Grand Master's chamber of the room, and looked forward to the wildly erotic dreams that soon occupied his mind. His nighttime fantasies always were of the same sexy, muscular mystery man, and were tender and passionate. Upon waking, Ethan often chuckled to himself how he somehow was more exhausted in the mornings than when he went to sleep. As tired as his mornings were, the memories of the night's dreams quickly became the favorite part of his day. The old mansion, once just a project for his construction company, became a place of mystery to him. A place where reality and fantasy blurred. Ethan started spending more and more time at the mansion, setting up his laptop in the majestic dining hall, telling himself it was for convenience. But deep down, he knew it was something else. He was drawn to the mansion by a force he couldn't explain. A force that made him feel something he hadn't felt in years. As the days went on, and All Hallows' Eve approached, the strange occurrences intensified. Footsteps echoed through the empty halls, shadows flickered in his peripheral vision, and the scent of tobacco lingered in the air, though no one had smoked in the house for decades. The mansion was alive, refusing to be forgotten. As odd and somewhat eerie as the happenings in the manor were, they didn't frighten Ethan as expected. On the contrary, the sounds in the chambers and the bizarre feeling of another presence nearby comforted Ethan. He found himself looking forward to not being alone any longer. Ethan's work began to suffer. His partners grew impatient as delays marred his plans. Lawsuits loomed over his failure to demolish the mansion. He knew he had to act quickly to salvage his reputation. But every time he tried to move forward with the demolition, something held him back. The thought of destroying the mansion filled him with a dread he couldn't explain. One evening, as Ethan sat reviewing construction plans, he made up his mind. The mansion had to go. Either his company or the old estate must lay in ruin. But as his mind was resolved to the decision that must be made, the house somehow knew it was being threatened. Suddenly, the room darkened, and the house seemed to hold its breath. Then, at this impossibly late hour in the evening, a dark, imposing figure appeared in the grand doorway. Ethan's blood ran cold. An icy chill of fear gripped him. The Halloween holiday had gotten the best of his imagination. He instantly assumed that either a ghost, ghoul, or murderous killer was now in his presence, and he was to be victim of something dastardly. Ethan's heart raced faster and faster as the man stepped forward towards him, his presence blood-curdling. Ethan's eyes darted around the musty old room, looking for a weapon of some kind. How can I defend myself from this intruder? Who is this shadowy figure? What does it want from me? The realization that he was helpless against this shadowy stranger gave him no choice. His years as the alpha male in his business dealings were his only way out of this potentially life-threatening situation. With a deep gulp and a powerful, slow, inhaled breath, Ethan composed himself, and as calmly and assertively as he could speak, he flatly asked, "Why are you here? Who are you? How did you get in?" The man fully appeared to Ethan and smiled. It was the man from his dreams. With a wistful look in his eyes, the figure spoke. "I am Julian Graywood IV, Lord of this estate. This has been my home for 200 years. I'd been alone here since the last of my kin passed so many years ago. I've stayed because it's all I have, all I know. I have nothing else, and I have nowhere to go. Ethan shook his head, conflicted inside. In a flat, dismissive tone, he commented, "You're just a dream. Nothing more." Julian repeated himself in a warm, welcoming voice. "I'm a presence, what is commonly referred to by most as a ghost. We very much exist. We are not as you'd expect from the movies and TV. We are indeed real." Julian extended his hand as he introduced himself. Ethan shook it firmly, responding casually, "You feel real, like an ordinary man. How can I be sure you're an apparition?" Julian grinned, leaning in as he spoke candidly. "The last several nights, in your dreams, in your fantasy, was I there? Did I exist then? What you believed was your imagination was very real." Ethan blushed for what may have been the first time in his life as he wondered. Could the wild, passionate, lust-filled fantasies of the past few weeks be more than just dirty dreams? Julian wasted no time in acting on Ethan's uncertainty. He knew Ethan was questioning what was real and what was fantasy, so Julian pulled Ethan closer without hesitation. In an instant, their faces were intimately close, and Ethan was ensnared in Julian's muscular arms. Julian continued, "I've watched you all week as you tirelessly worked. You're an impressive and handsome man. I've longed for someone like you, to speak to touch, to get to know. I've felt a connection with you and your soul. Your desires reached out to me. Your dreams invited me in. So I answered. These last few days, our moments together, have been a gift." Ethan's breath quickly grew shallow as Julian's face drew closer to his. A rush of excitement gripped him. Despite the impossibility of it all, Julian felt real, and Ethan understood and agreed with everything he said. It was impossible to deny. Ethan felt the same way about Julian. The firm grip of his hand, the tenderness of his touch, and oddly, the comfort of his presence. All these things brought both exhilaration and calm to Ethan's mind. How could he feel these emotions? Who was this spirit, and how could he be touching Julian when by all reason he didn't exist? Julian's soft smile deepened. His voice was a low, soothing murmur that made Ethan's skin tingle. Spirit transcends everything. Time, space, and even life itself. Ethan didn't respond with words. He couldn't. There was too much to say, and he suddenly had no idea how to express himself. Instead, he pressed his forehead against Julian's, his eyes closed, breathing in the quiet assurance that Julian offered. Here, with Julian, he wasn't the calculating businessman everyone knew him as. He was just a simple, desperate soul, A lonely man, vulnerable, open, desperate for a connection with another being. Now, he was eager for something he'd fought against for far too long. Julian's hand rested on Ethan's chest, right over his heart. Ethan's breath hastened at the touch, the affection radiating from Julian's fingertips, sending a shock of emotion through him. Julian's touch was gentle, but firm, a silent promise that he wasn't going anywhere. And for the first time in years, Ethan didn't want to run from another man's affection. "I'm scared," Ethan confessed, his voice breaking the silence between them. Once steady and sure, his hands trembled slightly as they rested on Julian's waist. "I'm scared of how much I want this." Julian's thumb stroked gently along Ethan's face, a calming gesture that made Ethan's pulse quicken. As they sat close together, the fire's flickering light casting soft shadows around the room, Ethan couldn't tear his gaze away from Julian. The moment's intensity was palpable, and every inch of him buzzed with anticipation. Julian's hand was still resting on Ethan's chest, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breath. The firelight reflecting in Julian's eyes, making them seem even deeper, and Ethan found himself lost in the comfort and excitement of their connection. Gently, as if savoring every second, Julian's fingertips traced small patterns across Ethan's chest, their touch feather-light but grounding. Ethan's breath hitched as Julian's hand slid down, caressing the curve of his waist before resting just above his hip. It was a simple gesture, yet the tenderness behind it spoke volumes. Julian's touch was steady and sure, making Ethan feel as if time had slowed and there was nothing beyond this moment. Julian's other hand came up to brush back a stray lock of Ethan's hair, his thumb lingering on Ethan's temple before he let his fingertips glide to sweetly caress his face. The intimacy of the touch sent a thrill down Ethan's spine. No one had ever touched him like this before, so softly, so carefully, and as though Julian was taking the time to memorize every part of him. With a deep breath, Ethan leaned forward, closing the space between them. Their lips met again, but this time it was different, more intense, more certain. The kiss was slow, almost reverent, as if they knew this was more than physical. Julian's hands moved to cradle the back of Ethan's neck, pulling him closer, and Ethan felt the warmth of Julian's body pressing against his. As the kiss deepened, Julian's hands roamed across Ethan's back, his touch soft but firm, sending shivers of warmth through Ethan's entire body. Ethan's hands, tentative at first, slid up Julian's chest, feeling the solidness of his form beneath his fingertips. There was something grounding and thrilling about how they fit together, their bodies moving in perfect harmony. Julian's touch grew firmer, his hands guiding Ethan, and their closeness becoming almost overwhelmingly intimate. The fire crackled softly in the background, casting a soft glow over their entwined forms. When they finally climaxed, their breathing heavy and their bodies entwined, Ethan felt a sense of peace settle over him. Julian held him close, his arms wrapped protectively around Ethan's body, and Ethan felt at peace for the first time in years. The next morning, Ethan's alarm woke him up with a jolt. "Damn it! The board meeting is in an hour," he yelped as he calculated how much time he had to shave, shower, and present the status of the job to his business partners. Without any other thoughts on his mind, he grabbed his suitcase, scattered clothes, and rushed out the door to his car. Ethan was gone, and Julian wondered when he'd be back. Days passed, and Ethan didn't return. Julian didn't materialize. There was no need to. His estate, much like his heart, was once again abandoned and desolate. Ethan, on the other hand, doubled his efforts and workload. Sleep was no longer an option. Time was not on his side. He had a mission, a job to do that was more important than anything else in his life, and he tackled it with a renewed purpose. Ethan lived out of a suitcase in his office and showered at the gym. His penthouse apartment was vacant since it served no purpose to him now. It wasn't until Saturday when Ethan finally returned to his stark abode. Upon entering, his only thought was how stark, rigid, and industrial his life in this place was. Ironically, it was the exact opposite of the Graywood estate. Ethan's domicile resembled a 5-star hotel that was designed for utility, function, and practicality. With his week's worth of tireless work completed, and his mission accomplished, Ethan completed the last of his tasks in his penthouse. Pleased with himself and all that he had done, he flopped down on his bed and enjoyed a much-needed reprieve. Ethan finally returned to the old, ornate mansion. He parked his Ducati squarely on the house's weed-filled, dried front lawn. He left his car carelessly due to his eagerness to get inside and see Julian. Ethan entered the manor with the same intensity as he had approached his past week's business transaction. Within those walls, Julian was still nowhere to be found. The building that had recently been alive with the passions of two men now sat cold and dead once again. With great trepidation, Julian appeared. He seemed uncertain and cautious about Ethan's return. This man did not seem like the same vulnerable, sweet Ethan he had grown to know over the last few weeks. This man was driven and on a mission. His intensity seemed daunting. "Is everything okay?" Julian inquired softly, expecting Ethan to snap back in a firm, formal manner. But instead of Ethan's demeanor matching his sharp-driven demeanor, he smiled warmly, as if it was a glorious morning, and Julian was his first glimpse of the most beautiful sunrise ever. "Julian, yes, I've got wonderful news to share with you." Julian sighed in relief at his enthusiasm and quietly stood, awaiting Ethan's announcement. "This week, I negotiated a new location for the business tower I've been contracted to build. This beautiful estate will be protected forever by the Historical Society, and it's under the ownership of my construction company. So, in short, your home is now safe." Julian excitedly took Ethan in his arms and kissed him passionately, then exclaimed, "I was afraid you were not going to return. This week was painfully long and lonely without you." Ethan frowned. "I'm so sorry. I should have told you where I was and what I was doing. There was just too much to do and no time to do it."
I needed to move mountains to redirect the project to ensure that everything was in order for you to keep your home and be safe. They grasped each other and held each other tightly as they celebrated their victory. A long, passionate kiss accompanied their jubilance. Julian then deeply gazed into Ethan's eyes as he sweetly whispered, "Ethan, I hope you meant to tell me that our home is now safe. This was my family's manor, but now it's yours." Ethan smiled broadly and agreed. Yes, our home. We hope you enjoyed this unique Halloween story. We'll admit it was a bit different from your usual haunted house tale. We wondered, what could be sexier than a strapping spirit, an alluring apparition, or a pumped-up poltergeist? We hope we have answered that question for you. On behalf of everyone at Steamy Stories, we wish you a frightfully fantastic Halloween holiday and hope you'll join us next month as we warm up your Thanksgiving spirits for another special holiday episode. Until then, later, bro.